Peace be with you. Tomorrow is 4th of July, Independence Day. It is a day during which we commemorate the victory of the American ideals of freedom and liberty. Unfortunately, this day has turned into a party day where we just are off of work and we drink and we shoot off fireworks and we don't try to remember anything in regards to how difficult it was to start something like this in the first place and how important these ideals are, because we really have never experienced much oppression ourselves, so we think that this is just a way of life. But it's not so. This is a fluke of history, and unless we are educated and we understand the threats to it, then it will go away, just like any free people have gone away before us. Thomas Jefferson said, "Educate and inform the whole mass of people. They are the only sure reliance for the preservation of liberty." He also said, "If a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects to what was never, and it never will be." So there is no way that we can be ignorant and free. So for this 4th of July, I wanted to share what the founders of this country told us the greatest threats of liberty are. Now, there's several, and I'm going to share two that I find most important. The first one is the spirit of the party. In his farewell address in 1796, George Washington went through a whole list of threats to our country that are going to happen down the road, and he was not wrong. Everything he said is happening, and his whole speech was prophetic. So I strongly suggest everybody go read his farewell address. In it, he says, "I have already intimated to you the dangers of parties in the state. Let me now take a more comprehensive view and warn you in the most solemn manner against the baneful effects of spirit of party generally. It exists under different shapes in all governments, more or less stifled, controlled, or repressed, but in those of popular form, it is seen in its greatest rankness and truly their worst enemy." So George Washington basically says that, look, the spirit of the party, you got Republicans and you got Democrats, this kind of spirit where people start hating each other like this is the greatest threat to liberty, and he explains why. He says, "The alternate domination of one faction over another, sharpened by the spirit of revenge, natural to party dissension, which in different ages and countries has perpetrated the most horrid enormities, is itself a frightful despotism. But this leads to a more formal and permanent despotism. The disorders and miseries which result gradually incline the minds of men to seek security and repose in the absolute power of an individual, and sooner or later the chief of some prevailing faction, more able or more fortunate than his competitors, turns this disposition to the purposes of his own elevation on the ruins of public liberty." So basically he says as the infighting between the parties gets worse and worse, what we're going to do is we're going to seek to give the party that we are for, the people that we think are for us, more and more power to suppress our enemy. But what is going to happen is that we are eventually going to give that person absolute power, whether they're Democrat or Republican, doesn't matter, and they will become a dictator, and they will have the kind of power to dictate to us whatever they wish on the ruins of public liberty. So that is the first threat. So people who are just enchanted by this whole party party spirit and the conflict between the parties, and who are all for defeating the other side, need to rein in their behavior, avoid that kind of extremism, because it leads only to ruins of public liberty and true and permanent despotism. The second threat to public liberty is lack of morality through the destruction of religion. And if you want to say, they talked about separation of church and state, they were never religious people. They were truly religious people, and you can see that best through reading Thomas Jefferson's writing, where he says, "I am a Christian in a sense of that I truly follow the moral precepts of Jesus. I'm just opposed to dogmatism, and I am opposed to giving one dogma precedence over another or supporting it with government money." So that's the kind of separation they wanted. But they understood that religion is essential for morality. And if you don't have morality, what you do is, so if you don't have morality and people do whatever they want, you are going to again seek to give somebody power to stop the immoral people from harming you, harming your family on the ruins of public liberty. And that's exactly what the founders of this country said. John Adams said, because We have no government armed with power capable of contending with human passions unbridled by morality and religion. Avarice, ambition, revenge, or gallantry would break the strongest cords of our Constitution as a whale goes through a net. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. So he understood that religion is absolutely necessary for morality. The religious dedication to morality at your own expense doesn't come from any other source. And without morality, you cannot have liberty, because if you are an evil person, you can't have liberty to harm others. And in order to stop them, you can't have liberty. You have to give power to somebody. And George Washington, again, in his farewell address, expanded on this statement. He doesn't refer to John Adams's quote directly, but he expands on this. He talks about the same thing. He says, of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. In vain would that a man claim a tribute of patriotism who should labor to subvert these great pillars of human happiness, these firmest props of the duties of men and citizens. And then he says, and let us with caution indulge the supposition that morality can be maintained without religion, because you're going to have people who are going to claim that you can have morality without religion. But he says, whatever may be conceded to the influence of refined education on minds of peculiar structure, reason, and experience, so they've been through this before, both forbid us to expect that national morality can prevail in exclusion of religious principle. So this is what the founders of this country said. This is what they warned us about. And although they were truly imperfect people, what they produced, the documents that they produced and the advice that they gave certainly gave us the ability to create a society much more perfect than they had. If we don't listen to their advice, 4th of July is going to stop being meaningful in any sense, and we are going to be ruled by a king, an emperor, or whatever, just like happened to the Romans. That is the warning they tried to share with us, and unless we share that warning with each other and try to understand it, then our destruction is ensured. Peace be with you.